At 10:15 p.m., laughter filled the theater. A single line, "You sockdologizing old man trap," brought the crowd to roaring amusement. That's when John Wilkes Booth, a celebrated actor who knew every corridor of the building, slipped quietly into the president's box. He raised a small .44 caliber Derringer pistol, pressed it behind Lincoln's left ear, and fired. The laughter stopped. Lincoln slumped forward. Booth leapt from the balcony shouting, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants, the motto of Virginia. He landed awkwardly, breaking his leg, but managed to escape into the night. Lincoln was carried across the street to the Peterson house. He never regained consciousness. At 7:22 a.m., April 15, 1865, the 16th President of the United States was dead. And yet, for all the chaos that followed, the manhunt, the headlines, the mourning, one question still remains. Why was Lincoln really killed? The Civil War had ended just 5 days earlier. April 9th, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse, when General Robert E. Lee surrendered to Ulysses S. Grant. Lincoln's vision for the future was clear. Reconciliation, not revenge. He wanted the South rebuilt, not punished, with malice toward none, with charity for all. But that vision made him dangerous. To some, he was the savior of the Union. To others, the destroyer of the old America. The radical Republicans in Congress wanted harsh reconstruction, military occupation, confiscation of Southern lands, and new political power. The Southern elite wanted their world restored, slavery gone, but hierarchy intact. Lincoln stood in the middle, too forgiving for one side, too radical for the other. Booth was no lone madman. He was part of a Confederate spy network that had operated from Canada, plotting raids and kidnappings throughout the war. At first, the plan was to kidnap Lincoln and trade him for Confederate prisoners. That failed. Then came the whispers that peace would be built on mercy, that Confederate leaders would live, that Lincoln might even welcome black men into the vote. For Booth, this was blasphemy. He saw himself as Brutus, striking down the tyrant to save the Republic. But look closer. Booth's contacts included Confederate agents like John Surratt, whose mother's boarding house in Washington served as the conspirators' meeting place. His network stretched to Richmond and Montreal, both hotbeds of post-war intrigue. Even today, letters and intelligence reports hint that money and orders may have flowed from former Confederate circles, possibly through the Confederate Secret Service. Booth may have fired the gun, but the web that formed around him was far older and far deeper than one man's hatred. April 14th was meant to be more than an assassination. It was a decapitation strike. While Booth targeted Lincoln, his co-conspirators Lewis Powell and George Atzerodt moved against the Secretary of State and the Vice President. Powell stormed William H. Seward's home, stabbing him repeatedly. Atzerodt was assigned to kill Andrew Johnson, but lost his nerve and fled. If all three attacks had succeeded, the U.S. government would have collapsed overnight, leaderless, paralyzed, and vulnerable to Confederate resurgence. Only Lincoln died. But the plan revealed the scale of the conspiracy. Booth fled through Maryland into Virginia, aided by Confederate sympathizers. For 12 days, he hid, first in Dr. Samuel Mudd's home on April 15th, then the home of Samuel Cox the next day. Crossing to Virginia on the 23rd, He stayed in a cabin house of William Lucas, a free black, and then finally Garrett's farm. On April 26, 1865, Union soldiers surrounded a tobacco barn on the Garrett farm. Booth refused to surrender. The barn was set ablaze. A soldier, Boston Corbett, fired through a crack in the wall, striking Booth in the neck. As he lay dying, Booth whispered, "Tell my mother I died for my country." Lincoln's death was not just vengeance. It was political prevention. By April 1865, the Civil War had ended in blood. But Lincoln's plan for peace was already under attack. He wanted to rebuild the Union through reconciliation, not punishment. In his second inaugural address, March 4, 1865, he spoke of malice toward none, charity for all, words that horrified the hardliners in Congress. Lincoln planned to restore the Southern states quickly under his 10% plan, requiring only 10% of voters to swear loyalty before rejoining the Union. He had already begun talks to readmit Louisiana and Tennessee, and to offer former Confederates full pardon if they laid down their arms. But to the radical Republicans, men like Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner, that mercy was betrayal. They wanted the South ruled under military occupation, its leaders tried for treason, and its economy rebuilt under Northern control. They saw Reconstruction as a chance for political and financial domination. A new war fought through legislation and contracts instead of guns. Lincoln also stood against their plan to punish the South economically. He opposed the harsh Wade-Davis Bill of 1864, which demanded majority loyalty oaths and permanent disenfranchisement of ex-Confederates. When he vetoed it, Stevens and his allies declared that Congress, not the President, should dictate the terms of peace. At the same time, powerful Northern industrialists and speculators saw profit in the ashes. Railroad barons, war contractors, and bankers wanted Reconstruction run by their hands, and Lincoln's cautious approach threatened their designs. His death on April 15, 1865, changed everything. Within days, Vice President Andrew Johnson, a Southern Unionist with little political skill, took power. He tried to continue Lincoln's lenient policies, but the radicals overpowered him. By 1867, Congress imposed Reconstruction Acts that divided the South into 5 military districts, stripping former Confederates of power and opening the door to massive corruption. The Freedmen's Bureau, meant to protect newly freed slaves, was underfunded and politicized. Reconstruction became a battleground of exploitation. Contracts, land seizures, and bribes replacing Lincoln's vision of unity. His death cleared the way for Reconstruction by force, led by men who would strip the South, exploit freedmen, and turn recovery into a battlefield of corruption. Lincoln died because he stood between two Americas, one seeking revenge, the other restoration. And neither could tolerate his peace.